To the humans, he was just a furry friend named Rex who loved belly rubs and tennis balls. But when the Alien High Commander scanned the crate, he didn't see a pet. He saw a predator with jaws strong enough to crush bone, senses that could smell fear, and a mouth filled with deadly bacteria. The aliens thought Earth had brought a biological weapon to the peace talks. They were ready to start a war to destroy the monster. They had no idea that this weapon was the only thing standing between them and total extinction. High Commander Xal-Thar stood on the main bridge of the Great Galactic Station. His 4 hands shook slightly as he adjusted his uniform. Today was a historic day, but it was also terrifying. The humans were arriving to sign the first peace treaty. Xal-Thar knew very little about Earth, but the rumors said it was a dangerous, death world full of storms and gravity that could crush a normal alien. He wanted peace, but he prepared his guards for war just in case. The station was deadly silent as the massive human ship, the Terran Star, slowly connected to the docking port with a loud metallic clang. The heavy airlock doors hissed open, releasing a cloud of white steam. Xal-Thar signaled his elite security team to raise their laser rifles. Out of the smoke walked Captain Miller. The human looked surprisingly small and weak. He wore a simple blue uniform with no armor and carried no weapons. Xal-Thar relaxed his shoulders. These humans did not look like conquerors. However, his relief disappeared instantly when he saw what the human soldiers were dragging behind them. 4 massive, heavy metal crates floated out on anti-gravity carts. They were scratched, dented, and looked like high-security cages. On the side of each crate, bright red letters shouted a warning: "Live cargo, handle with caution." Suddenly, a loud thump came from inside the first box. Something powerful was hitting the metal walls. A low, deep growl echoed through the silent docking bay, freezing the blood of every alien in the room. It was the sound of a predator. Xal-Thar quickly looked at his wrist scanner to analyze the boxes. The data made his heart stop. The scanner showed creatures with rapid heartbeats, massive muscle density, and mouths full of sharp teeth designed to tear flesh. The computer flashed a red warning: "High threat level detected." Xal-Thar panicked. He realized the humans had not come alone, they had brought biological weapons of war. He watched in horror as Captain Miller smiled and reached his hand toward the latch of the cage. The human was about to release the monsters. "Halt!" Commander Xal-Thar screamed. His voice cracked with fear, echoing across the metal walls of the docking bay. He quickly ordered his guards to charge their plasma rifles to maximum power. Captain Miller paused, his hand hovering just inches from the metal latch of the crate. He looked confused, not scared. "Is there a problem, Commander?" Miller asked calmly. Xal-Thar did not answer him directly. Instead, he frantically signaled for Dr. Glip, the station's head scientist, to bring the heavy bioscanner. They needed to know exactly what kind of horror waited inside those crates before it killed them all. Dr. Glip ran forward and pointed the large, blinking machine at the crate. The screen instantly lit up with terrifying red numbers and warning symbols. Glip's large eyes went wide with shock. "Commander," the scientist whispered, his hands shaking, "this organism is a nightmare." He read the data aloud for everyone to hear. The creature had a bite force strong enough to snap alien bones like dry twigs. Its mouth was filled with millions of bacteria that could cause fatal infections within minutes. Even worse, the creature had sensors in its nose that were so sensitive it could smell fear and adrenaline from a mile away. It was a perfect biological machine, evolved only to hunt and destroy. The analysis got even worse when they scanned the creature's brain. The data showed that the beast's mind was totally focused on the humans. It had zero self-preservation instincts. The scan suggested it would willingly die to protect the human captain. The aliens gasped in horror. They believed the humans had genetically brainwashed these monsters to be suicide soldiers. They looked at the small, weak humans with new fear. Only a crazy species would enslave such a powerful beast and force it to act as a servant. Xal-Thar realized that the humans were not weak, they were masters of monsters. The tension in the docking bay was electric. Captain Miller tried to explain that the creatures were harmless companions, but Xal-Thar refused to listen. He ordered his soldiers to push the crates back into the airlock and eject them into deep space immediately. As the alien guards moved forward to obey, a young soldier named Snort tripped over his own feet. He fell hard against the delicate locking mechanism of the lead crate. There was a loud metallic snap as the safety seal broke. The heavy ramp of the crate slammed onto the floor with a crash that shook the deck. Time seemed to slow down as the nightmare inside was finally unleashed. A massive four-legged beast burst from the shadows of the container. It had black and tan fur, and its ears stood straight up like radar dishes. The alien soldiers screamed and scrambled backward, dropping their weapons in pure panic. The creature, a German shepherd named Rex, did not tear their throats out immediately. Instead, it ignored the soldiers and trotted straight toward Commander Xal-Thar. The commander froze, paralyzed by terror. He knew that if he ran, the predator's chase instinct would take over. He stood perfectly still, closing his eyes and waiting for the pain of the creature's teeth. However, the pain never came. Instead, the beast lowered its large head and began to aggressively sniff the commander's boots. Xal-Thar trembled, believing the biological weapon was analyzing his chemical scent to track him forever. Then, the creature began to hit its long tail against the metal wall, thump, thump, thump. The rhythmic sound echoed in the silent room. The aliens watched in horror. They did not know what a wag was. To them, this rhythmic beating looked like a targeting signal. They were convinced the beast was transmitting Xal-Thar's location to the other monsters in the crates, marking him for immediate execution. Before the alien guards could fire at the dog, the entire space station shook with a massive explosion. The bright white lights flickered and turned a deep, emergency red. A loud robotic voice screamed over the speakers, "Hull breach. Sector 4. Invasion alert." The misunderstanding about the dog was instantly forgotten as the real enemy arrived. The heavy steel wall on the left side of the room was torn open like wet paper. Through the smoke and sparks, a swarm of nightmares crawled into the room. It was the Krager, a terrifying race of giant insect warriors that consumed everything in their path. The aliens on the station had feared the dogs, but the Krager were the true monsters of the galaxy. The Krager were fast and covered in thick, shiny black armor. They moved on 6 sharp legs that stabbed into the metal floor with every step. They made a horrible clicking sound that terrified everyone. The station guards panicked and fired their laser rifles, but the blue beams of energy just bounced harmlessly off the insects' hard shells. It was a slaughter. The guards were tossed aside like dolls. A massive Krager warrior, standing twice as tall as a man, charged straight for Commander Xal-Thar. The commander tried to run, but he slipped on the polished floor and fell hard. The giant insect loomed over him, raising a jagged blade arm to strike the final blow. Xal-Thar closed his eyes, accepting his death. He knew his lasers were useless, and his guards were defeated. But suddenly, a sound cut through the noise of the battle. It was not a laser or a scream. It was a low, vibrating growl that sounded like a thunderstorm trapped in a chest. The biological weapon was no longer wagging its tail. Rex had lowered his body, his hackles standing up like spikes on his back. The dog bared his white teeth, not at the commander, but at the giant insect. The playful pet was gone, the ancient predator had arrived. Captain Miller did not reach for a laser gun. Instead, he shouted a single, sharp command that cut through the chaos: "Squad, release them. Rex, sic M." Instantly, the human soldiers kicked open the latches of the remaining 3 crates. The metal doors flew open, and a blur of fur and muscle exploded into the room. A massive Rottweiler, a sleek Doberman, and a fast husky joined Rex in the fight. They did not attack blindly. They moved like a single, intelligent mind. Xal-Thar watched in awe as the biological weapons demonstrated why they were Earth's top hunters. Rex launched himself into the air, totally ignoring the creature's thick chest armor. He was smart. He clamped his powerful jaws onto the insect's unarmored leg joint. There was a sickening crunch of bone and shell, and the giant insect collapsed, screeching in pain. Before the monster could stand up, the Rottweiler pinned it to the ground, while the Doberman attacked the vulnerable neck. The laser rifles had failed because they just bounced off the hard shell, but the dogs used speed and physics. They were too low for the insects to hit and too fast to catch. They swarmed the invaders, barking and biting with a wild fury. The Krager were overwhelmed. They were used to fighting soldiers who stood in lines and shot energy beams. They had no idea how to fight a pack of wolves. The loud barking echoed off the metal walls, sounding like the roar of 100 beasts. The insects, realizing they were now the prey, began to panic. They clicked their jaws in fear and scrambled backward. One by one, the terrifying invaders turned and fled back into the dark hole they came from, running away from the Earth monsters, to save their lives. The station was safe, saved by the very creatures the aliens had wanted to destroy. Silence fell over the station as the last of the insect invaders scrambled away into the darkness of space. The battle was over as quickly as it had begun. Commander Xal-Thar slowly stood up, brushing dust from his uniform. He looked at the biological weapons with a mix of fear and deep respect. He expected the beasts to turn on the humans now that the enemy was gone, but he was wrong again. Captain Miller simply gave a short whistle. Instantly, the terrifying predators stopped growling. Their ears went back, their tails started wagging again, and they trotted back to their humans like happy children returning from a playground. The transformation was unbelievable. Rex, who had just crushed an armored insect with his teeth, sat down next to Miller and nudged the captain's hand with his wet nose. Miller laughed and scratched the dog behind the ears. "Good boy, Rex." "Who's a good boy?" the captain said in a soft, silly voice. The scary monster rolled onto his back, exposing his soft belly to the air, demanding to be rubbed. Xal-Thar stared at the scene, his mouth open in shock. He finally understood. These were not slaves or brainwashed weapons. They were partners. The humans had formed a bond with these apex predators that was stronger than any computer program. Xal-Thar walked forward, stepping over the broken pieces of insect armor. He picked up the electronic treaty pad that had been dropped on the floor. He didn't even read the details, he simply signed his name at the bottom. "Captain Miller," Xal-Thar said, his voice filled with gratitude, "we accept your peace treaty. But I have one new demand." Miller looked up, worried. The alien commander pointed a long finger at Rex. "You must leave a security team here on the station. And they must bring these good boys with them." Miller smiled and shook the alien's hand. "Deal," Miller replied, "but you have to pay for the dog treats." Xal-Thar bravely reached out and patted Rex's head. The dog licked his hand, sealing the strangest alliance in galactic history.